Islam, Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. First off, I like to rise, walking in Jerusalem, just like John, giving praise to Allah, the author, the creator, the governor of the world, almighty, eternal, and incomprehensible, the one who stretched forth the heaven with his hands, who have described with his fingers the courses of the stars, who set it bounds to the ocean that it cannot pass, and said to the stormy winds, be still. I'd like to give honor to the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. Talking about none other than our holy and illustrious prophet, Noble Drew Ali. I'd like to give honor to Prophet Noble Drew Ali because it was he who reached down into the watery grave of hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harmed and set you and me back upright on our feet again. I'd like to give honor to all of those and honor to all of you that have and will aid and assist us in this, our divine and gigantic mission, the uplifting of fallen humanity. And last but not least, I'd like to give a special honor to Epic, because so many of us don't even try. At this time, I'd like to read from the book of the seven seals that was divinely prepared by our holy prophet Noble Drew Ali for our earthly and our divine salvation. I'll be reading from the Moorish Holy Quran, and I'll be reading from the last chapter in the book. And it reads on this wise: the end of time and the fulfilling of the prophecies. The last prophet in these days is Noble Drew Ali, who was prepared divinely in due time by Allah to redeem men from their sinful ways and to warn them of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth. John the Baptist was the forerunner of Jesus in those days, to warn and stir up the nations and prepare them to receive the divine creed which was to be taught by Jesus. In these modern days, there came a forerunner who was divinely prepared by the great God Allah, and his name is Marcus Garvey, who did teach and warn the nations of the earth to prepare to meet the coming prophet, who was to bring the true and divine creed of Islam, and his name is Noble Drew Ali. He was prepared and sent to this earth by Allah to teach the old-time religion and the everlasting gospel to the sons of men. The Moorish Science Temple of America is a lawful and chartered and incorporated organization. In a subordinate temple that desire to receive a charter, the prophet has them to issue to every state throughout the United States, etc., that the world may hear and know the truth, that among the descendants of Africa there is still much wisdom to be learned in these days for the redemption of the sons of men under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We, as a clean and pure nation, descendants from the inhabitants of Africa, do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the family of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, neither serve the gods of their religion. At this time, I'd like to read verse 7, and it reads on this wise: therefore, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations, as it was prepared by their forefathers for their earthly salvation. While we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which was found by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. Indeed, it's an honor, a pleasure, moreover a duty, to be able to come to my Portland listening audience and talk to you about the last prophet in these days and time, because yesterday we had a holiday, the 4th of July. And that's what I want to talk about today. It's important that I talk about the 4th of July, because every time I talk to somebody, and we was in a meeting yesterday evening, and the meeting that we was in yesterday, it was about 72 people in that meeting. And everybody in that meeting was fasting. They was fasting because they said that it was the 4th of July. And they were saying that because of what the 4th of July meant, they all was in the meeting and they was fasting. They was fasting and they was praying. And one of the lessons that they was talking about was the 14th and the 15th Amendment. And they said because of the 14th and 15th Amendment, we fasting. We fasting because we have to look and check the records. And all these brothers and sisters is running around here talking about the black people going through this, the black people going through that. This is taking place in New York with the brother on trial about the same thing that it was told of us not to do. We're talking right now about the Moorish Science Temple of America, the oldest Islamic movement in North America. Because before the Moorish Science Temple of America, there was no one in existence who was telling you who you was and who your forefathers were. And the reason why that was, when Allah said, why did Allah send Jesus to this earth? It said to save the Israelites from the iron hand oppression of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, who was governing a portion of Palestine at that time. So now we're talking about an issue. We're talking about a supreme issue. And Noble Drew Ali told us about the supreme issue, because the supreme issue is issuing you your nationality card because you had one, but now you don't. Let me tell you why. Everybody's talking now about the Moors. You hear people in the church, ministers talking, and everybody's saying, have you heard of the Moors? They the ones who went into Africa, and they did this, and they did that. Man, let's look at this. I like that though. I like it because I see the progress. Because when the Moorish Science Temple of America was first founded, now Elijah Muhammad's son, Ward Dean Muhammad, taught on that not too long ago. He was saying that the first time his father ever taught a lesson, the first time his father ever taught a lesson, it was in the Moorish Science Temple of America. And whoever came into the Moorish Science Temple of America, the first thing that you knew was your basic literature. Because the book said whenever Allah is in need for a prophet, Allah will send one. Whenever a people is in need, all you got to do is call to God. But let's say this now. And I got to say this because I had this trouble a long time. We're talking about a supreme issue now. And the supreme issue that we want to talk about is nationality. We want to go back into that because yesterday was the 4th of July. Let's look at that. Now let's go back in the records. I said that everybody is talking now about the Moors winning to Spain and the Moors. Have y'all ever heard of them? They gave the world this, they gave the world that. We knew this a long time ago. This ain't something that we knew. We knew this, especially those in Washington, D.C. We really learned about this in 1954. And yesterday I just posted a picture of a brother by the name of William Porter Hill. Brother William Port Ill and Matthews Ill Appleduck was two of the brothers that was on the security force when we first formed the Moorish Science Temple of America in Lawton. And we talk about these brothers who first formed that and was teaching this concept to their family and carrying it for the longest, because there has not been a Moorish Science Temple of America. They founded the Moorish Science Temple of America through the brother Lynch-Bey in 1954, and this is when we started learning about who we were and about our forefathers. Because before then, we did another thing in Washington, D.C. They talking about in 1899 how they changed the whole system. They changed the whole school curriculum in Washington, D.C. because of you and me was talking about a supreme issue, telling people that there was a civil rights and there was a human rights. And the civil rights is a non-political issue. Civil rights is not even an issue that you could take before the UN. You can't take it, because when you talk about civil rights, a non-political issue, then you want a granted privilege. And everybody who call themselves Negro, colored, and black, you know what you're doing? You looking for a granted privilege. But what hurts me so much with all you chumps, I'm going to say that way because I can stand on it, is that you know, especially a lot of you, know that when the Moors first went into Spain, you coming into your own now. That's why I like R. Jones Band them over there in 71 in Washington, because they got the record. Now, you have Act 6 of our divine Constitution and bylaws. Every Moorish American, if not, they working with the government. Every Moorish American know their basic literature. And one of the things in our basic literature that you know is Act 6 of our divine Constitution and bylaws. And if you don't know your divine Constitution and bylaws and you are front like you are somebody, you on that payroll too, like they was back in 1930. I just posted when they was giving somebody $100,000 a year to teach this everlasting gospel, because they was doing everything they could to keep us from knowing who we were, who our forefathers was, and what your nationality is, because everybody right now, you got to understand, we first went into Spain. And when we went into Spain to give the European civilization. And when you went into Spain to give Europe civilization, who was you that went into Spain to give European civilization? Who are you? There are many different nations and tribes in Africa. The same thing in Europe. You talking about Europe, but we remember right here in Portland, Oregon, where I am right now. Here in Portland, Oregon, they had a sundown law. And the sundown law that they had right here in Portland, Oregon, we of African descent had to be in the house by sundown. And if you wasn't in the house by sundown, these Europeans come and crush you. But they was European. But what was their nationality? Where did they come from? What part of Europe did they come from? Because you got St. Patrick's Day, you got this day, you got 5 or 6 holidays, and all Europeans does not celebrate every holiday that those in Africa descent celebrate. So we now have to look at them, because when you look at Germany, those are they who call themselves the so-called Jews. So we're talking about some issues now. We're talking about some issues that we must look at, and let's go back to this thing, nationality. And I want to go back to nationality because it's important that I do, because when we first went into Spain to give Europe civilization and bring him out of the Dark Ages. Now, what is the Dark Ages? The same thing that dude Nipsey and them going through up there in court. Because when you begin to lick and suck another woman and do all those things that diametrically opposed with our folks. Now, my father was born in 1898. He got a brother-in-law that was 3 years older than him. And they gave me some information. They said certain things you just don't do. And everybody that grew up with me before the Europeans was able to move in and do what they do, certain things you didn't do. Certain things our women didn't do. Because in all the world, there are two things. One is Asiatic, and the other is European. Two different concepts, two different ideologies. So now we're in Spain, and we're talking about right now, what was our name? Let me give you, so we got 7 acts in our divine constitution and bylaws. Everybody I know that was in, I ain't talking about them dudes just running through this joint and running out, claiming that. I'm talking about those that actually study the prophet. You have to know this. Whenever you go to college or whenever you go anywhere, certain tests you're going to have to take. And listen to this again because it's important. This was given to us, and I was so honored and happy when I learned it. And I'm talking about Act 6 of our divine constitution and bylaws. And let me tell you what it says again. It says, with us, all members must proclaim their nationality. And we're teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are part and parcel of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folk, black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now. And all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained noble Jew Ali the prophet to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Now let me stop right here for a minute because we're talking about the ancient Moabites. And we saying that the ancient Moabites is those who inhabited the northwestern and the southwestern shores of Africa. But let's look at this. I told you the other week that the Moors fought with the Ottoman Turks in 1453 to restore the Islamic creed. Now this is when Muhammad, they was Muslims. But let me tell you who we were before we united with Muhammad and called it Islam. Everybody didn't unite with him. Some people were somewhere else doing other things that God say do. Because when you begin to talk about the cradle of civilization, you're talking about Africa. You're talking about the motherland. You had Asiatic and you had the European. You had Africa and you had Europe. And we're talking about a mentality now. And most of me was a European. I was a European because I did everything that the Europeans did. I accepted their holidays. I want their woman. I want everything they got that my forefathers tell me to give back to Caesar. The book tell you that. It say give back to Caesar what belonged to Caesar and give Allah the thoughts of your heart. So now we're talking about the book again. And it said, will you give in brief the line genealogy through which Jesus came? And the book say, some of the great fathers through which Jesus came are Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary. And why did Allah send Jesus to this earth? To save the Israelites from the iron hand oppression of the pale-skinned nation of Europe, who was governing a portion of Palestine at that time. So now we're talking about a foundation. We're talking about us as a people. We ain't even talking about Jesus right now. Because we said, will you give in brief the line through which Jesus came? It said Abraham, because Abraham wasn't always Abraham, but Abraham is the father of the faithful. Abraham, Boaz by Ruth. And then you have Jesse. Then you have King David. Then you have Solomon. Then you have Hezekiah. And then you have Joseph by Mary. See, we was already in the spirit. The same thing that anybody else done, because when you first talk about Jesus, let's make this clear. I had a partner, man, his name was so-and-so. And we was partners and he got killed. And when he died, now everybody running around saying they are him. And that's the same thing. Everybody can't be Jesus. And if Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judah in the house of David, and you took my Jesus, buried my Jesus in Vatican Square in the 15th century and took on my name, something wrong with that picture. And all my brothers, all them gangsters now, you got to understand that in all the world there are two things. One is truth and the other is falsehood. And when you want to be a gangster, because I knew people was that stuff. Took this and did that and did all that stuff. But you can't serve two masters at the same time. You have to love one and despise the other. So they done took my Jesus. They buried Jesus in Vatican Square. What do that mean? Where's that? We in Europe now. We talking about Rome. Same thing when you talking about the Italians. You talking about the original gangster. And now you want to be that because you want to be a European. Give back to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. We got work to do. According to all true and divine records of the human family, there is no Negro, colored, or black attached to the human family. Because my cousin Ruth, who just passed, she used to go to one of them Negro baseball leagues. And the reason why she used to go to the ball game with the Negro, because at that time, that's all we was known as. But when you begin to talk about Negro and then colored, and then after that, when Martin Luther King, then we become black. But in 1964, LBJ, Long Bean J, the Johnson, they signed the rights for human rights. There's a civil rights, human rights. All this is a bill put on the table to give you and me some civil rights. And we talking about human rights now. And the only way that we could really deal with this human issue is for everybody to proclaim their nationality. You got to be who your forefathers were. You Europeans took all this different politics, because everything didn't transpire in the whole of Africa. But I tell you one thing transpired in the whole of Africa. They took my Jesus. They buried him in Vatican Square. They took on the name, they claimed my Jesus. You even took Jesus and made him a part of Christianity. And the foundation of Christianity began in Rome. The Roman nation founded the first church, of whom crucified Jesus of Nazareth, for seeking to redeem his people from under the Roman yoke and law. And what is the Roman yoke and law? The customs, the culture, the heritages, and the traditions of the European people. So when we begin to talk about the spirituality, this is what was stole from you and me. And somebody else took it and put it in their hand because they know once they get it, then they can control you. I seen a picture the other day when they was talking about when they first let you and me start learning about Christianity. But they said they had a few, not just one, they had a few Europeans sitting in there listening to you teach. And by they sitting there listening to you teach, that meant that they was able to form their signs to counteract your sign. Because man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And I don't want to be nobody. I don't want to act like nobody. All I want to do is be who my forefathers were. Because I told you before, and my nephew, my cousin, godson just mentioned that. We was talking about Jesus. And we got to keep talking about Jesus because they wiping Jesus away. They're using Christianity to wipe Jesus from your memory. They don't want you to know nothing about Jesus because they stole Jesus from you. They've stolen. Where was he born? In Bethlehem of Judah, in the house of David. And we know that there's a house of David. And we know when you're talking about the house of David, you're talking about Boaz by Ruth. You got to be talking about Boaz by Ruth Your forefather, because then come Jesse, and then King David, and then Solomon. But they stole that from you. And we don't understand. And it's a lot of centuries ago, a lot of years ago. But as I said, yesterday was the 4th of July, and you look at Frederick Douglass, he taught a lesson that day in the 16th century about the same thing that we celebrated yesterday. So all you people who say that you want freedom for your people, first thing you got to do is be who your forefathers were. Everybody I know have a nationality. If you're European, you're German, you're French, you're Dutch, you're Portuguese, etc. All of these are European nations, and I thank God for you. And we have the same thing. But I cannot be who my forefathers is not, because through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery due to the fact that they honor not the creed and principles of their mothers and fathers and strayed after the gods of Europe, of whom we knew nothing. So we got to understand there's get ready to be a change. Everything ain't the same no more. You got to understand there's an issue that we need to sit down at the table and talk about. That's why that dude Trump moving like he moving. I remember the girl Kamala Harris. She ran for the office of the President of the United States. And I heard this dude Trump, forgive me. I heard our President Trump say, I didn't even know she was black. I thought she was something else. One minute she this way, the next minute she that way. But his father is Jamaican born. And if her father is Jamaican born, that is her seed. And that's who she is. But right now, you never hear nobody say it. You ain't never heard nobody right now until it came over the wire that we was Moors. And where did this come from? Because this is brand new. I've been in the Moorish Temple of America 50 years or better. And we've been teaching this concept even when they got rid of the Prophet Noble and those people that Noble taught formed their thing. They wasn't mentioning black. They call you an Asiatic black man. Because black, according to science, means death. And when you talk about black, you talking about something dead. And our people, because you got to understand when you talking about 75 years old, 25 years from now, I'll be 100. So you got to understand that in 1968, when Martin Luther King got killed, I remember, I was in school, I was still in school then. That was a tough day, man. People was going through changes then. When they got rid of that brother, 1968, everybody was talking about it. But you know what? We was talking about civil rights. We were talking about granted privilege. And if you call the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. So if you say that you're colored and you want civil rights and you ain't asked for human rights because it's too great, then we still is an issue because I was talking about Kamala Harris. And if she said that she's black, then we got to look at this. Because if we're going to bring this issue before the United States and call genocide, how can we bring this issue? Because all the people playing basketball, all of our sports brothers and sisters, they black. They don't know. They wasn't born, though, because I'm your elder. See? Because I was around when we started calling ourselves black. See, before then, we was Negro and we was colored. And these names were given to slaves by slaveholders. In 1779, I just heard Abdul say that, and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now. And all men now must proclaim their free national name. See? We're talking about the national issue now. We were talking about the divine national issue. That's why Drew Ali said national and divine. He said, I brought you your nationality and I brought you your divine creed. They say that we were 3/5 of a man. And if they say that we are 3/5 of a man and we are not whole, then I agree with that because 2/5 are missing. Because when you begin to study your lessons and look at the 5/5, which is a whole, 5/5 is a whole all day. And if 2/5 are missing, what are the 2/5 that are missing? Your nationality and your divine creed. And when you're talking about divine creed, you're talking about your relationship with God. And who taught you about your divine creed? Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary. So now we're talking about Boaz, and we're talking about Jacqueline. And Jacqueline and Boaz is the two pillars. So we're into Africa now. We're talking about our forefathers now. We're talking about a lesson that was given to us because when we cried to the great God Allah to send us Noble Jew Ali to redeem us from our sinful ways and to warn us of the great wrath is sure to come upon the earth, Allah gave him a curriculum to bring to us. And this is why if you ever visit the Moorish Temple of America, the Grand Sheiks there teach every member their basic literature. And from there, we could grow with it. That's why you see 1 million people every day. I'm the leader of the Moorish. Everybody want to be the leader because you learned something. But see, right now, the prophet said that the movement will go so low that you think they vanish from the face of the earth. And you're going to look up and see nothing but turban and fez. But I tell you that a lesson that happened that shouldn't happen. When you find brothers and sisters that join the Moorish Science Temple of America, they join the Moorish Science Temple of America because they say that they've been born again. And being born again, the book says, to be born again, do that mean that I must go back through my mother's womb? He said, no. He said, that which is of the flesh is of the flesh, and that which is of the spirit is of the spirit. Now, what took place when I was in the joint at the time, there was brothers went to dudes that was gangster. With the other brothers said, man, I want to learn about the Moorish Science Temple. I want to learn about the Moorish Science Temple because I've been hearing about the Moorish Science Temple all my life, but you don't want to hear about the Moorish Science Temple. That's why when you heard about the Moorish Science Temple, Sister Christina Price Bay and everybody else come, now you come in and get what you want out the Moorish Science. Now you change the name. We got another name now. They don't with this one, and they will that one. You not the Moorish Science Temple. You this one. You ask them. You the humpback. The roof clock, I don't know what it is, but it's just one Moorish Science Temple of America. He said, every subordinate temple of the Grand Major Temple is to form under the covenant of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and create their own laws and customs as long as they're in conjunction with the laws of the Holy Prophet and the Grand Temple. So now, I'm out here now, and I'm with my temple. We got 100 members. But because I don't agree with the Sheik, I'm going to go somewhere else and do my thing. Now, every subordinate temple can form their own laws. Form your own laws and don't hook up, don't take the prophet, keep the prophet where he is. And one day you can come to your own because ain't but one temple. And if you're serious about the prophet, we won't grow. Ain't but one temple. Ain't no time I'm back. Ain't but one back. Ain't no 2, 3 back because Allah sent one prophet in every hour of time. And if not, and I remember this. I seen something that took place, and we all really need to look at this. Happened years ago when the prophet went over in the East to have that meeting, with the brothers and sisters in the East. He took some brothers and sisters with him. And a lot of things took place after that meeting when they had the Moorish Home 1, Moorish Home 2. They had so many different things was taking place in the prophet's era. But the reason why you have two different is because one was still with the European. They were still working with Rome. They still taking a paycheck. They did everything that they could to keep us from knowing that we was Moorish America. Because if you call yourself Moorish America, you say, why are we Moorish America? Because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. And who are these Moroccans? They are descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and the southwestern shores of Africa. So we're looking at something now. Now you know you ain't black. I done told it to you. You working with the European against me too. Because everybody out there know that. Man, you working with the European. If you call yourself black, because through scientific study and investigation, man will be what he know. Now look at this for me. Check out that when the Moors first went into Spain, we was Moors. Check the record, because it's all over now. But you're still calling yourself black because you're getting a paycheck. And black, according to science, means death. And the only black flag that I know is the one that kills roaches. And every time I see somebody who call themselves Negro, colored, or black, you killing roaches because you're working with the government. Check your history out. Everybody have a history. And when you, not his history, I'm talking about our history. When you check out your history, the Moors went into Spain in 711. Even during the time that we was in Spain, we fought with the Ottoman Turks to restore the Islamic creed of Mecca, beginning from Muhammad I. So our history go there. We have a history. But right now, we don't know where our lineage is, because when we went into Spain, what was your religion? Our nationality, we was Moors. We was Moors when we was Spain, but there was different brothers and different sisters that went on that journey. Everybody wasn't the same. Some was Hebrew. Then you had something was this, and some was that. And this is what you have to look at. That's the same thing in the church. You got the Baptist, you got the Protestant, you got the Methodist, you got the Presbyterian, and you have Holy Roly too. So man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And just like when the Moors united with Muhammad, the Moors united with a lot of other brothers and sisters too, because we all studying the same book, really. Muhammad came and formed this situation, but you have the book. The book say that Muhammad is the last and the seal of the prophet. And after Muhammad, ain't no more coming. But the book say whenever a nation's in a need for a prophet, Allah will send one. And if we wouldn't have lost our nationality, there would have been no need for Allah to send Noble Drew Ali. But we lost our nationality. They start calling us Negro, colored, and black. Don't you see what happened in the history of the human race? When you take my nationality and call me something else other than who I am, take away my forefathers, that they'll have no place on this earth land, because man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father, unless his power extend beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. So Allah, the Father of the universe. Allah, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. This is why we asked Allah to send us someone, because we had lost our nationality. And if we wouldn't have lost our nationality, there wouldn't have been no need for Prophet Muhammad. But you talking about Muhammad the last? Yeah. If we wouldn't have lost our nationality, then there wouldn't have been no need for another prophet. But when we lost our nationality, and just like today, they called us Negro, colored, and black, and what then transpired with Islam now, you don't need to pay Jesus no more mind. That's why when Drew Ali first came, he said, will you give in brief the line genealogy through which Jesus came? That's what he said. Will you give in brief the line genealogy through which Jesus came? And then they talking about Abraham. That's way back there. Not before then. Jesus wasn't even thought about then. Jesus' mother and father wasn't even thought about that. But Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judah, and how today we all one people, bearing one name. Abraham, I told you, was not always Abraham. He first was Abram, and then he became Abraham. And that Ham, he became Ham when he found grace in the eyes of God. When he started living according to the fruits of the Spirit. when he start elevating, trying to do what God say do. Because there's two. I remember a brother wrote a book, said, man, they went to the mall and they had some books and we took the book. Yeah, you would have got the book, but the reason why you didn't get the book, because you on something else. You out there. You want to do this, you want to do that, but how can you do that? How can you serve two masters at the same time? None can serve two masters at the same time. So the prophet say, he's going to make the European enforce his law. The prophet also said that the movement will go so low that you think that it has vanished from the face of the earth. And then you're going to look up and see nothing but turban and fezzes. Because that is the garb of our forefathers. Man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extend beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. Now let's talk about the tools of the workshop of the mind. So we're talking about now, we're going to build a house. And when you're building a house, you're going to have tools to build this house. And the tools are the workshop of the mind, where things are made of thought and when we build up character. But what I was doing, I was using my hammer when I should have been using my plane. I was using my plane when I should have been using my saw. You're going to have the proper tool at the proper time. You're looking for something. In order for you to get yourself together, the first you have to do is recognize who Noble Ali is, because he's Allah's prophet. It said, why did Allah send Jesus to this earth? The same reason he sent Noble Ali, to uplift fallen humanity and teach us those things necessary to make us better citizens. Jew Ali hooked us back up with the family of nations, because if not, we won't. Europeans switched up here. They done took our brothers and sisters. They done took 1 million over here to the 1 million over there and gave all them different concepts, and they got different ideologies. But we need to understand that man today, who his forefathers were yesterday, and there's no one who was able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extend beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. Right now, I want to give honor again to Open Signal. I see I got one of these Open Signal shirts on, because I've been up here 12 years. I've been here in Open Signal 12 years, talking about nationality and talking about divine creed. I remember the girl that she still worked for Open Signal. She's somewhere else, Emily. Now forget that. When I first got here, I was teaching and said, you can't teach those things that you're teaching here really important. I said, why not? Because I'm a Moorish American Muslim. I'm not Christian. I'm not European. This is Open Signal. And then they understood that. And this is what it says, your concept, and then you teach your nationality. I don't know too many other people teaching nationality. I don't know too many other people teaching divine creed. And this is why I was honored to be able to come here to Portland, because when I got in the door, the only state in the union that I knew that those of African descent had to be in the house by sundown. And I couldn't understand it, but it happened. And they still teaching that today. Bruce Bashar left here earlier. He remembered that. Bruce is over 80. A lot of brothers and sisters remember those days. But it changed. And it's another wisdom that was given. And most of those men that told us that we had to be in the house by sundown, most of their daughters are married to those of African descent. Because you want that blood in you. When you put that blood in you, that means that you'll live longer. Because a lot of stuff that we don't even know, we don't even understand. We don't even know what nations played what part during the slave trade. Even when you begin to talk about slavery and those brothers and sisters, I'm talking about you and me and our friends and family, they came from other places, they did that for a reason. This is why in 1899, when we said how they changed the whole school system in Washington, D.C., a lot of those brothers and sisters were mulatto. And when they seen the wisdom and the thing that they had that they shouldn't have, they changed the whole system. My cousin, that was in the school system, all those sisters that was in my family that was educated, kept that in our mind for all those years. And they've been talking about it. Nationality is the order of the day. Everybody needs a nationality. It's going to happen. It might not be today, but in order to deal with these issues that we have to deal with, you got to bring the issue to the table. And the first thing you have to do, say, man, they're right. I done went to college. I'm a fool. I'm a fool right on. Being trained to jump through the hoops. The longer I stayed in the school, the better I can jump and the more fitted without defend my jump. First thing you have to look at is say, man, let me look at this again. They said that in 1711, the Moors went into Spain. And when the Moors went into Spain in 1711 to give Europe civilization, they was Moors. They was not Negroes. Because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders. And we got to look at this. I might be dead and gone. And I'm going to teach it to my babies every day. But I might be dead and gone. But this issue is going to come back up. Because if you're talking about the Atlantic slave trade, when you begin to talk about the Atlantic slave trade, you got to include the Moors. Because the Moors is the one that left out of Africa to go into Europe to give Europe civilization to bring them out of the Dark Ages. And I like to reiterate, all those things that we went into Spain to bring the Europeans out of the Dark Age, that's what they're doing, Nips and them dudes doing today. They're doing the same thing today. They're doing the same thing in court right now. They're doing the same thing that our forefathers told us to give back to Caesar. That's why when we first joined the Moorish Scientific, certain things you couldn't do. Certain activity that you had within you, you had to let go. Because this is the reason why we went into Spain. The same reason why our members of the Moorish Science Temple of America went into the Moorish Science Temple of America to bring us out of the Dark Ages. And see, the Dark Ages is when you begin to take on certain concepts, certain ideologies, things that was not a part of your forefathers or your foremothers, and you begin to stray after the gods of Europe, of whom they knew nothing of. And we start getting ourselves together by, I just said that there were some tools of the workshop of the mind. And they say these tools of the workshop of the mind is where things are made of thought and where we build up character. So we talking about building up character now. I was talking to my godson, and they was telling me, he said, man, the thing that my uncles and my fathers and my friends used to do, he said, I thank God that I heard it and learned from them. So now I don't have to do those things no more. He said, the things I used to do, I don't do no more. The places I used to go, I don't go no more. The friends I used to have, I don't have no more. There's been a great change since I've been born. So being born again, as I said earlier, don't mean that you got to go back through your mother's womb. Being born again means that which is of the flesh is of the flesh. And that which is of the spirit is of the spirit. So you all need to join the Moorish Science Temple of America. You need to join the Moorish Science Temple of America and learn the curriculum of the Moorish Science Temple of America established by Prophet 05Jul Ali in 1913. Because this is when Allah sent him to redeem us from our sinful ways. Because it is a sin for any group of people to violate the national constitutional laws of a free national government and cling to the name and principles that delude to slavery. And when you call yourself Negro, colored, and black, you are taking on those concepts and you are taking on those ideologies that delude to slavery. And it is a sin for any group of people to violate the national constitutional laws of a free national government and cling to the name and principles that delude to slavery. Like I said, Jesus, they took him in the 15th century. I say we was in Spain from 711 to 1492. 1492, 9 years later, that's when they took my Jesus. They haven't talked about there's no other place to done that. We did it during the slave trade. Listen, everybody said, you hear it all the time. You done took Jesus and you done took him over there and made him other than who he is. And you think that it ain't gonna be a war to change that? And you talking about this need to take place, that need to take place? No. Just like when you talk about Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, who was they? What was their nationality? Were they born in Bethlehem of Judah, the house of David too? Look at it, because you know they come from Africa. Tell me a European that came out of Africa. Tell me one. Tell me one. I mean, I ain't got no problem with that, because we talking about truth. In all the world, there are but two things. You have two, you have a nationality, and you have a divine creed. So now, when we talk about love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, we're talking about the highest principles that's known to man. I mean, you love your brothers and sisters. You have peace, freedom, justice. Truth is the only thing that changes not. In all the world, there were two things. The one is truth, and the other is falsehood. And falsehood is that which seem to be that truth is all and has no cause, and yet it is the cause of everything. Falsehood is naught, and yet it is the manifest of right. Whatever has been made will be unmade, and that which is a beginning is an end. So Jul came. He came in 1913. And when he came in 1913, he redeemed a lot of us here in America. Because you got to understand there was no Islam or nothing here. There was no other kind of religion here other than Christianity. You had Catholic, you had Protestant, you had Methodist, you had Presbyterian, but there was no prophet born here in America when Jul established the Moorish Science Temple of America. When you look in the Moorish American prayer, it says, Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Jul. Amen. Tell me another religion that was here in the United States before the coming of Prophet Noble Jul to teach you Islam other than Jul. And when everybody else started teaching it, they was getting paid. They was getting paid because there was two other entities that was involved. It was 3/5 of a man. The other 2/5 is your nationality and your divine creed, and now you're whole. I told you 5/5 is a whole all day. When you talk about spirit, soul, and flesh, all that's good. But there's two entities that we got to sit at the table with. And one of them is your nationality and your divine creed. And we got the paperwork because it's in the records. All the records say when we first went into Spain, we were Moors. We wasn't Negro, we wasn't colored, and we wasn't black. And see, a lot of you that's younger than me, I remember when colored and Negro was the top flight. When I went to school in 1955, when I went to elementary school in John F. Cook in Washington, D.C., the teacher told me that I was a Negro. Then they came back later, hey man, look, we got something else we're doing now. See, because you know, we done told you that man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And we trying to keep the records out of everybody else's eye, so we done change your name now. So you no longer Negro. Because Negro is a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because they contain black water. We're going to call you colored now. Because colored is anything that has been painted, stained, varnished, or dyed. Okay, we call you colored now. And then we're dealing with these civil rights issues of Lyndon Johnson and everybody else. And now we black. Martin Luther King said the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. So they looked at the record. They said, man, we got to do something about this too. Because, you know, he said he ain't colored now. And you got all these brothers out here going against the system, and they calling themselves black. And most of the revolutionaries that I knew were bucking against the system. They were bucking against the system for what the system was doing, but they knew, George Jackson and all of them knew, that they weren't Negro, colored, and black. See? Because we had that before they even came about. We had this in 1913. In 1913, Allah sent Jew Ali to this earth to redeem us from our simple ways and to warn us of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth. So they was taking going against the grain of the status quo, so they accepted that term black. But they know in their mental that they couldn't be Negro, colored, and black, because they know that Africa is a continent. They knew that we came from Africa. And if we came from Africa and we gave the world civilization, then there's another lesson. There's another lesson in this that we got to look at, and there's another lesson in it that we need to understand, especially those here in Portland, Oregon, because there's a beef going on now because a lot of the brothers up here, you know, I ain't gonna get into it, but, you know, they forgot, man, what Jew Ali said. So we, as a clean and pure nation, descendants from the inhabitants of Africa, do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the family of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, neither serve the gods of their religion. I close now, and I recite the Moorish prayer. I'm always honored, and may Allah continue to bless us all. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day through his holy prophet, Jew Ali. Amen. Wade in the water, wade in the water, Marvin, wade in the water. You are in trouble, the water. Who are those children all dressed in white? Look like the children of the Israelites. Who are those children all dressed in green?